Dave, you were a guest of, or a member of the delegation from downtown in MIPIM, out in the south of France, and you're going to be joining the delegation again to go to Leeds for REiiF. What was it that stood out for you from your experience in MIPIM? What did that deliver for you?
Yeah, I think we had a great year this year, and I think there's a bit of training involved, isn't there? You have to do things right and wrong as you go year by year. So I think the first year we were like super busy, doing too many things and not really achieving a lot. And then we were a bit better in year 2, and I think this year we had a really good year. We made sure we spent time with the right people and the right events. As you say, we joined the downtown delegation, so we got a chance to meet some of the public sector and some of the business leaders find out what they're doing, understand a bit more about policy, what their ambitions are. It was quite interesting to see, we met people from right across the UK, Northern Ireland, out into the US, Chicago, all with very similar challenges, strangely enough, So, there is a bit of a commonality of the things that the challenges people are coming up against, all the things we've talked about before, a bit of planning, a bit of land, a bit of market dynamics. So it was just interesting to see, how they're going about dealing with those problems. So yeah, it was pretty good. We got some fantastic leads, that we've already followed up on now. We've had some really good meetings on some quite substantial opportunities. And I think the other thing it does, I think what we find about MIPIM is it's a big relationship development job really for us, because we're not out there to attract foreign investment. We're there to do our bit for the city region as part of the delegation to help put the city on the map and showcase some of the great things about Liverpool and the Liverpool city region. However, for us, selfishly, it's about generating those relationships, and I think you get to spend time with some fairly senior public and private sector people that probably wouldn't have the diary time back in the UK. You get to know them a bit better, so it's a lot easier to pick back up when you come back and follow up on the opportunity.
At MIPIM, every city and every region on earth is represented there, from the Middle East, from the United States, obviously Europe and the UK. How important do you think it is that the city has a combined voice, public sector and private sector, at events like that?
Yeah, I think it's critical, because I think the two things that I suppose a city will want to show is that you have to be there, because you have to show that your city is on the world stage and it's an important player. But I think the things, and we talk about this a lot, I think investors don't just want to see a physical investment. There's an opportunity or something in the prospectus. I think what they want to feel is that region or that city has got something about it, that they want to work in the city. They buy into the culture, and I think they can see that it's a place that gets things done. And you can't get things done unless you've got public and private sector working in harmony. So I think it's been super important, that really. And I think more so because obviously UKREiiF is a bit more of a domestic. There is an international edge to it, but it's more of a domestic event. I think that's a big part of really putting that stamp on. And I think what went well this year, obviously we joined Liverpool, is there was a bit of that Liverpool stamp with a bit of Beatles music playing and a bit of really that DNA came out a bit better this year, which I think was good.
You mentioned there that UKREiiF will be taking place in Leeds in a few weeks' time. What are the challenges that we're facing in that conversation, and who are you looking forward to meeting or working with or getting into discussions with?
Yeah, well, it's a strange one, REiiF, because diary time's difficult because domestically everyone wants to get in the room with all their customers. A lot more of our customers are there than our suppliers and partners, so it can be a little bit more challenging. But I think the return on investment is even greater, because I think nearly every conversation you're having, I think we said in MIPIM, you could be sort of taking pointers from different cities all over the world. You're bringing information back and knowledge, whereas more or less every conversation you're having in REiiF is about a specific opportunity, or we're trying to move a relationship forward with one of our public sector or private sector partners. So I think that's quite a sort of an efficient way to sort of get things done, because you've got everyone there at the same time. So I think we're looking forward to that. We've got lots of things that we've been nurturing along, for the last couple of years, that things that are going to start to get legs now and come to fruition. So I think it'll be a good time to sort of maybe get that done. try and get a few of the next sort of announcements out of the things that we've been working on, the opportunities that are starting. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
One of the challenges for everybody in the construction and development game is funding and financing. And with such uncertainty in the world, what can we do to find ways to sell that story or tell that story more loudly, or perhaps in different places even?
Yeah. Well, I think to some degree, I think, you know, we've done a lot of work on around sort of private rented and build to rent investors and pension funds and things like that. And I think one of the dynamics is they want to be able to see that they can invest in a project that they can get moving and they can start having it generating revenue. It's not tied up in development finance for forever. So with the way that we build, and not just ourselves, but with our building components and our partners that we work with, we're able to get better, more rapid delivery. I think the other thing investors are valuing is that it's a lower energy house is more attractive. It's a more long-term prospect. There's some statistics out there that the rent defaults are through the floor because nobody wants to lose a zero bills or a low bills home. So I think they're very attractive assets to own. So I think that conversation sort of helps a lot. But I think what they want to see is, particularly because it's generating revenue for them, is they want to see that their capital can be returned pretty quickly into a revenue generating sort of model, rather than it being tied up for 2 or 3 years in the development phase. So a lot of conversations around that sort of going on. We've got our Octopus Energy partnership around zero bills, so we're leading a lot of discussions on that. It's our chosen delivery model. We only want to really regress from that if the viability is a challenge, but ideally we should be trying to find a way through that, give people with zero bills homes. So there's a lot of exciting conversations going on about that as well.
And it's also challenging for you, I imagine, to think about these new demographics. We've spoken earlier about challenges of first-time buyers, getting their first foot on the first rung of the ladder, and maybe there's a diminished expectation that you have to own your home anymore, and even what that home looks and feels like. How do you make sure you stay in touch with what the next generation of property buyers and home buyers are looking for?
Yeah, I think it's different. It's difficult because it changes, doesn't it? Obviously, because as generations sort of come through, they have different wills and desires. And I think, obviously we're in this social media world now where people can see a lot more around. People want to travel now and move around different cities in the UK or even internationally. So I think that's going to morph. And I think, one of the things that we always look at is that we should be making sure the homes we're building now are adaptable. So, they can change with demand. We do a lot of work now on one bed properties that can be converted into 2 and 3. They've got a pre-conversion methodology. So as the customer or the investor is investing in housing assets, then they know they can morph and change that, with the demand. And I think, as you said there, it's the ownership model. I think it creates a great opportunity. I think what we've got to try and make sure is that we've got to make sure the home feels like your home. And you've got an access and a route to buy it. And I think that ticks a lot of boxes because people want to put their roots down, they want to have children, they want to put the children in the school, build friendship groups. So having that balance, I think this is why we like working with registered providers a lot, because they have these flexible models that allow people to sort of, I suppose, go on a few different journeys to get to the right destination of owning the house at the end. And I think that's quite important.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're building houses, but you're making homes.
Yeah.
And if people want to stay in their community as well, it's important that there's the correct mix there, because that's not just young people entering the market. It's people getting perhaps near to my age of the spectrum who are looking to downsize and looking for new housing options. What work do you do to provide those solutions for aging retirees to stay in their communities?
Yeah, well, I think this is around when we talk about like an engineered product. So what we have to look at is, and we talk a lot about this, is like the house is a pretty dumb asset. It's once it's physically built, and it is what it is. It's not very technologically advanced. Your mobile phone, you can travel the world with your mobile phone and your passport. But your house, the most expensive thing you'll ever buy or you aspire to own, very uncomplicated piece of kit, doesn't tell you anything, doesn't interact with you. So I think this is what we're trying to do through building innovation and building design now, is look at, right, how does somebody want to interact with that home? So how can it, number one, how can it talk to you and tell you whether it's happy or sad, it needs help, it doesn't, you know, it's air quality is right, or there's an issue somewhere. And I think the second part of it is how can we make that adaptability so that we can start to make homes be different things over their life cycle. So as you said there, the same way as we've got options now with customers where we've got 2-bed properties that can go to 3-bed because that family may have more children, they don't want to move. They also then can downgrade back to 1-bed, walk-up apartments, and you know, the conversion methodology can go the other way. So I think it allows us to stay away from this primitive model where if you go back, you know, 5-6 years ago, everyone was trying to put 1-bed properties in because there was a big 1-bed market. Well, that's going to change at some point. We'll have loads of 1-bed properties that nobody wants, and everybody wants more family homes. So I think that's what we've got to look at. As every time we do something, we look at it from a design perspective, and how can what's the cleverest way we can design that building or those building components to be able to, for it to have a second or third generation life.
Oh, I think that's exactly what the conversation on housing has become. It's the adaptability to suit our lifestyles and the way that we see ourselves living our lives in the future. And thanks for coming in again today, Dave. It's really interesting to hear about the work that you're doing, and I'm sure we'll be meeting you in Leeds at REiiF and hearing more about what the Starship Group are up to there. Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.